Okay. My goal for today is to tell you a bit about my interests as an autistic child. Um, One reason is because I'm writing a book about this, and I just like to share a bit about the content of it. And maybe not everything is written in a book, but as this channel has been mostly about filming nature and reading books, I was thinking of making it a bit relevant to that because as a child, two of my main interests was being out in nature and reading books. So I'll just start telling you about my early years when I was from 0 to 3 years old. We lived in a hut that belonged to my family, and in this story is also a very interesting thing about my dad. I think my dad is autistic, and it was the family on my father's side that owned this hut that I was living in, and it was close to the forest and it was close to the sea. And I think it was very healthy for my dad to be there because it reminded him of his grandparents at his mother's side, and those were nature people from Russia. So he would thrive more and be more present with us children when in my early childhood when we lived there. More so than later when he became an engineer and worked with computers and mostly sat on his computer all day long. But I'll tell you a bit about my experience in me living in this hut. It was kind of a bit primitive. It was electricity and water in it, but the toilet was outdoors, like this wooden shaft with a wooden bench with a hole in it. No, I didn't notice that a lot when I was a child because I used a potty, but it was this primitive, and I was not unknown to physical play when I was a child, and that's maybe something that you wouldn't traditionally expect from an autistic child. But we did not have any iPads and cell phones when I was a child, so I would play with physical toys, and I would draw. I would very early draw on a board and on paper. So, and we would have a forest behind our house where we would go and play. And I like the smell of the forest, the moss and the fresh forest smell. I went there a lot to smell the forest, and that's maybe typical for sensory overstimulated children, that they go and seek calmness in the forest. Also, I would have this little plastic horse that with wheels on it that I would slide down a hill in a front yard. But so that's something I would do alone, and I didn't like getting help with it. And this is kind of what I think is unusual for an autistic child, because not the help part. Being independent was maybe typical, but not the physical part. We would also go out to fish a lot, and we had a boat, and my father would pick shells, seashells for us, blue shells, and we would use the content of these with this sea dorg, this sea fishing equipment with this wire around the wooden square that we would fish with. And I liked going to fish. I liked the smell of the sea, and we would also go and bath on islands where there was a lot of seashells and pick seashells and stuff like that kids don't do nowadays. So I would have some healthy early years. And then we moved till a student apartment, what do you call it, skyscraper. And I would go into kindergarten from I was 4 or 5, but I wouldn't be, maybe I was 4, 3, 4. I wouldn't be very interested in the other kids. So being with other kids was not a part of my interests as in my early years. I don't remember having any friends at the time except for my big sister. I would sit alone in the sandbox and build castles, and I remember thinking that the other kids were noisy, and when they gathered to play around the slide, I would kind of pull away, and I didn't understand why they thought it was so fun to make all that noise. So that's also part of the sensory overstimulated response to the environment that's typical for autism. Now, if I have to tell you, my parents did not know I was an autistic child, and they hardly knew what autism was. My mother learned later, but she was so misinformed that I would be offended by her telling me I was an autist because the symptoms did not apply to me. It was not until the last 10 years they figured out what girls with autism really was like. And I think the thing about sensory being very sensitive is typical for girls more than boys. And as we grew up, we moved into a house in the southeast of Norway, and we lived near the beach, so we would continue to go out in nature, in the forest and at the beach, and bath and play in the sand and pick seashells and pick stuff in the forest, like stuff that I enjoyed. So I got a lot of nature in my childhood. And then we had grandparents that had huts, access to huts, different locations, and we would go in the inland at a hut where we would go skiing in the mountains. And I was actually very good skiing when I was a child, at least. And that's also something you don't expect, but since my parents and grandparents were so good taking me outside, I would develop a lot physically. but there was a difference in how I was at my free time in my vacations and how I was at school in the gym classes, because in the gym classes there was just a whole bunch of noisy kids, and often there was ball games, and I didn't like sports and ball games, and I didn't like all the noisy kids. So I would have when time came and we would start getting grades in the gym classes, then my grades would be like at the bottom. But anyhow, when I grew up, we went a lot on skiing, and we went picking berries in the autumn, and I enjoyed that too. I enjoyed my grandmother's food. Like, she was good at cooking, and she made vegetables and salads, and I enjoy all this food. And I'm not that picky that many autisms claim to be. Many autistic people. So I'm not as I think myself that I'm not very picky, but my mother thought I was picky because I didn't eat all of those unhealthy creamy salads that she used to buy in the store, those prepared foods. I ate more raw vegetables and cheese and jam, like mostly healthy stuff, and that I think had to do with my sensitivity. As I started school, I would read very fast. I would learn very fast to read. I would steal my sister's books. She was 1 year older than me, and I would learn all the letters and start to read before I started school. So I would sit and read books in kindergarten, and the assistants there was surprised that I read a book all by myself. So when we started to read in school, I would pretend to be bad just not to stand out in class. But they discovered how good I was, and they gave me more advanced books. And I would also be very fond of numbers and maths. So I did well in all subjects except for the gym class. So I had no problems all of my school years until college and university. I had no problems studying, which I don't think that's unusual, because we are often very smart. People with autism, and I would have a very good memory for things like history and interest also. I would watch documentaries on Egypt and animals, especially animals. And that's a typical thing to enjoy animals. I would like to stay with my cousin at his farm. He would live in a farm, so we were at equal age, and I would play a lot with him in nature. Yeah. So in time we would also have these gaming machines, these PlayStations and stuff, but and the computers started to come with games, and I would play a lot of games. I would be very smart, and when I was a teenager, early teenager, I would play lots of games. Also when I was 10, 12, because my father, there was a divorce. I could tell you, in my early school years, I would have friends because my parents lived together and things were calm. So I would have a couple of friends that were just as calm as me and didn't like to run about with all of the noisy kids. But then they divorced, and after that I had problems getting new friends because there was this trouble about not wanting to participate in all of the noise and a lack of interest in their play. So I would mostly focus on the subjects in school. But I would be ignored in school because people did not. I was very silent. I was silent and shy, and those things are social things are very typical for an Asperger child. Not much was done to help me with this, and I remember one time they tried to arrange a friendship between me and another girl, but it was too arranged, so I just felt like an outsider. So that didn't work. And about books, yes, about reading. I was, when I became older, when I was 10, 12, 13, I would read a lot of books. I would read a book in a day. So I also remember earlier than that I would borrow 2 books in the school library in every week, and I would read 2 books in a week. So I would, and when I was older, I would read a book in a day. So I was very fond of books, and I would do that as much as playing computers. Actually, more because my mother, who I lived with, did not have a computer. Or she just had a writing program and no games. So I would read a lot of books and watch documentaries. And that's how I grew up as an autistic child. No, I think that's all I had in mind. I had to tell about my childhood for now. So if you think this was interesting, please give me a like. And if you feel like you recognize something of this in your own child or something, I recommend to seek out other channels like Autism on the Inside and Yo Samdi Sam, which is 2 channels I like about autism. Those are specialized in autism, so they could tell more about that. I don't know how much I'm going to spend time speaking about autism in this channel, but I just thought it would be interesting to give you a bit of a hint on why I put out stuff about nature and books, because maybe it's interesting to know me better. So if you like this content and you want to see more of what I put out lately, then feel free to subscribe and check out my other videos on I was renovating an old house in the mountains, and I put out reading some books and going on trips on paths and filming that. So if that's interesting to you, just check out my channel and subscribe. And please comment if there's anything you'd like to help me with or ask questions about, or if there's anything you like to know more about, then you can put a question down below. I hope this was enlightening to you. So maybe I'll get back to the subject on a later time. I'll try and pull this video out too much. So have a good night, evening, day, whatever it is, and hopefully I'll see you again. Bye.